Fort Union in the distance.
Won't you take me home and give me wings to fly? We can be alone in the castle in the
The Santa Fe Trail was a 900-mile overland road that connected Franklin, Missouri with Santa Fe, New Mexico. Near here, the trail split into the mountain route and the Cimarron route, and travelers had to decide which to take to continue east to Missouri. The Cimarron route was the most direct path, but lack of water and passage through American Indian lands made it no less hazardous than the mountain route. Today, both routes are part of the Santa Fe National Historic Trail. Here with Rob, travels with Dottie. In 1821, Captain Ignacio Gallego met Trader William Becknell's party from Missouri. Mexican independence from Spain 2 months earlier allowed Governor Facundo Magarez to welcome Becknell and thus open the Santa Fe Trail to legal international commerce between Mexico and the United States. This is where I live. I'm at Fort Union in, I believe it's Mora, New Mexico. I'm here with a couple of friends, and we are exploring this national park. Very cool. Jailhouse. They must have had a lot of people acting up around here because they have 5 whole cells. Boy, wouldn't you hate to be in one of those rooms? Ugh. Walking the trails at Fort Union can take anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half. The full trail is a 1.6-mile loop around and near historic structures of the fort. The shorter trail is a 0.5-mile loop trail. The trails here are relatively flat. All trails are wheelchair accessible. I see the loudspeakers there. I wonder if that's where they called the revelry. Probably so. That looks like it might be living quarters with fireplaces, although they look like pretty small rooms. For 40 years, between 1851 and 1891, Fort Union served as a military hub, overseeing the transformation of the American Southwest. There are many stories to be discovered here. Stories of soldiers far from their homes sent west to do a job, stories of indigenous people struggling to survive, and stories of Hispanos from the interior of Mexico caught up in the political turmoil of the Mexican Revolution and the Mexican-American War. Today, in this space and on these grounds, you can explore the complicated history of how the Southwest became American. This is the Santa Fe Trail here. It's like a couple of basement areas. Wow. So, there's 2 of them that's dug out. I'm supposing that these could be dug out as well. These foundations go a long ways. These are latrines, apparently. Huh. This is backside of some of those, what appears to be individual living quarters. Very well preserved right here. You see how the stucco is on top of the bricks, which I think is very common for the area. A little extra support in a few places. The views around here are stunning. The lands that the Santa Fe Trail passed through were not empty. They were occupied by American Indian tribes. each with their own cultures, conflicts, and alliances. The Mora Valley, where Fort Union was built, included ancestral hunting grounds of Comanche and Apache tribes. Southern Ute, Kiowa, and Jicarilla Apache also lived on this land. The Navajo raised crops and livestock here. Pecos and Jemez Pueblo peoples lived nearby in permanent settlements. Over the centuries, there were times of conflict between these groups, but there was also trade and cooperation. What do you suppose that is? Somebody probably knows. Interesting. Check out that modern day homestead in the distance there. That's kind of cool. Amongst the ruins. For centuries, American Indians had contended with Spanish invaders from the south. However, with Anglo-Americans, it was different. Anglo-Americans kept pouring into the region, and they were equipped with more powerful weapons. Not only did they push the tribes aside, they systematically killed the buffalo the tribes relied on. Over the span of 50 years, tribal worlds were turned upside down. Yet still today, indigenous peoples continue to endure and thrive. The buffalo sustained tribal cultures. Every part of the animal was used. Hides with hair left on it were used to make winter clothing, gloves, blankets, robes, and costumes for ceremonies or hunting. Hides with the hair scraped off were used for ropes, moccasins, teepees, drums, and shields. Some tribes in the Fort Union area fought the U.S. Army. Others found it advantageous to cooperate. Some used their deep knowledge of the land to assist the military against rival indigenous groups. Each tribe and each individual within a tribe faced decisions about how to respond when their lands came under siege. Unlike the neighboring Plains Indians, the Pueblo people had long built permanent homes. They lived in adobe villages and diverted water to irrigate fields of corn and melons. The Pueblo people had endured Spanish and Mexican rule and incorporated aspects of Hispano culture into their own. In 1846, General Stephen Watts Kearny claimed the New Mexican Territory for the United States. Some Pueblo and Hispano communities rebelled. The revolt was put down swiftly. Colonel Sterling Price laid siege to the Teos Pueblo, killing over 150 Indians and Hispanos. A Navajo leader named Manuelito in 1859 said, "The water there is mine, not yours, and the same with the grass. Even the ground it grows from belongs to me, not you. I will not let you have these things." We have some antelope out there. Do you see them? As the U.S. government increased its focus on westward expansion, American Indian tribes suffered. Fort Union troops were instrumental in forcing indigenous peoples into treaties that restricted their movements. By the 1870s, many tribes in the New Mexico region had been pushed onto reservations. U.S. policies forced children to leave their families to be assimilated into Anglo ways. Children on reservations were required to attend Indian boarding schools that promised to, quote, "kill the Indian in him and save the man," end quote. They were given new names, new clothes, and were forbidden to speak their own languages. Contact between students and their families was restricted. Relatives could visit only briefly at prescribed times. Photos taken during this period were often posed in order to create a sense of cultural assimilation. Now efforts are being made to preserve and teach indigenous language, native traditions, and tribal culture, passing down knowledge from one generation to the next. Times were changing, and so were the borders. In 1848, the United States and Mexico signed a treaty ending their 2-year war. With the stroke of a pen, Mexico lost almost half of its land, and the United States gained 525,000 square miles including the territory of New Mexico. Fort Union was built in 1851 to demonstrate federal power and protect the Santa Fe Trail and nearby settlements from Indian raids. Over the next 4 decades, the fort became a military hub to a network of other forts. The Army's mission was to suppress, subdue, and eventually confine the region's original inhabitants. The first Union fort was built in a hurry, too much of a hurry. Colonel Edwin Sumner decided to place the fort where the 2 branches of the Santa Fe Trail merged, away from the distractions and temptations of Santa Fe and close to Indian territorial conflicts. Soldiers started cutting trees and shoveling dirt. The fort included over 24 rough log buildings with barracks, officers' quarters, and a hospital. Insects quickly infested the poorly prepared logs. During the summer, soldiers moved back into their tents to escape them. The buildings rotted out within a decade. The second fort had a new design. As Texan Confederate forces advanced, commanding officer Mayor William Chapman turned to New Mexican volunteers, local Hispanos, to build the new fort. The Confederates never reached the fort. A decisive battle with the 1st Colorado Infantry at Glorieta Pass ended their campaign in the Southwest.